I have to say, and you guys can probably see by what I struggle with the most, aka things shooting things at me, that most of my roguelike experience has to also line up with bullet hells for some reason, and I used to think they were synonymous. I am now learning they are not.
For years, my girlfriend has always turned away from roguelikes. Something about the pressure of starting over from scratch each time just stresses her out. I wonder why.
Not even tired, thanks.
Well, I might be tired.
I've accepted her rejection of the genre, but have secretly been waiting for the right game to come along that could sell her on the merits of why roguelikes are actually fun.
Oh, I'm playing as the hawk guy. Do I have to worry about my toga falling off?
Apparently, I was working too hard, because all she really needed was hot characters and Greek mythology. I've been on a quest to heal my girlfriend's relationship with roguelikes for years, and I'm here to prove that Hades is the perfect game to make even the staunchest roguelike critic crack a smile.
Goodbye, father.
Goodbye, father. I'm in Tartarus.
The premise of Hades is simple. You're Zagreus, prince of the underworld and son of the titular Hades. You're on your rebellious kick and want to run away from home to go and hang out with the gods of Olympus on the surface.
In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
Whoa.
Hail, noble cousin.
Athena!
Now, let's get you from that miserable place.
She'll have to do a little more playing to find out the why, but the how is where the roguelike comes in.
Each exit has its own reward.
Oh. So there's purple and then... Oh my god, are these pomegranates? But if I eat the pomegranates, I can't leave.
Escaping the House of Hades means climbing through the 4 levels of the underworld, each with more difficult encounters than the last.
Oh, they're all dashing at me. Oh goodness, oh goodness.
The most challenging part is the bosses waiting at the end of each gauntlet. But the good news is, she isn't fighting them alone.
Ooh, is this Ares? Oh.
The gods of Olympus have caught word of my girlfriend's escape attempts and are offering aid in her ascent. The boons from the gods are the key to powering up Zagreus and making it to the top.
Ooh, that does a lot of damage. That's a lot more than my base sword last time.
But upon death, she's sent all the way back to the bottom and has to begin anew from scratch.
Ow, that is brutal. Oh no.
Only after the first death does our leading lady get her first glimpse at the House of Hades. It's not much to look at yet, but as she continues playing, that'll change. In the meantime, it has something much more important than fancy furniture.
Oh my god! Cerberus! Pet?
There's a good boy.
Oh, what a good boy.
Petting Cerberus became a requirement before all of Girl's escape attempts, but it also served as one of the many friendly interactions in the face of defeat. There's something to be said for a game where even after losing, you still feel rewarded for your efforts, even for something as small as getting to pet the good boy before starting your next attempt.
Oh, his preference means I only pet this head. The other ones are kind of standoffish.
The first level and initial encounters are all about learning how the game works. She'll meet each of the gods of Olympus and start figuring out which ones do what.
Oh gosh, I don't know what anything means! Ah!
Along with that, she's learning what the different enemies of Tartarus are and the best ways to deal with them. This is typical for most roguelikes.
Oh, that was really good because I took out like the whole group of them.
One of the ways Hades sets itself apart is with its style. The quippy dialogue in this game is top tier, and there's so much personality in every single conversation. Anyone with an exclamation mark above their head usually has some wisdom worth sharing, and a lot of the tutorials are cleverly taught through engaging dialogue.
Gotta use that fancy dash of yours and keep them guessing.
The boyo.
Catch you standing still.
Dash like mad instead of standing still. That's not the worst advice, I guess.
Okie dokie.
What I like about Zagreus is he tends to think out loud, and a lot of times he's saying what my girlfriend's already thinking.
They got me. No way to patch up. Got to keep going.
Well, I have a way to patch up. I just have to go to the next room.
Most roguelites sort of brush over the fact that players starting fresh each attempt, but Hades is funny because Zagreus knows exactly how many times he's tried to escape and failed.
Stupid skeleton twins.
I don't even know how to win in this game. Probably not dying at the start.
Pretty quickly, she figured out which enemies she liked and which ones were going to be a problem. Anything that dashed or shot a projectile was a no-go, which unfortunately made up about 90% of them.
The witches are wretched. I hate these guys. Okay, these guys I hate because they dash at me. And then the brimstone, these are also the bane of my existence. What are you giggling about?
Every single one you just popped up. I hate these guys. They're the worst. Every single one of them.
These ones I don't think I did, but everything after that,
Still, with enough practice, she'll get the hang of them eventually.
Doom! Do you see the red coming down? That's my doom.
After a few runs through Tartarus, my girlfriend finally started making it to the last room of the floor and waiting for her as the game's first major boss.
Oh, is this a boss?
Hot Zagreus.
Megaera!
Come on, Meg. Haven't we had more than enough of each other by now?
Despite how intimidating she is to a newcomer, my girlfriend had a really good first attempt at Meg, and that was a nice confidence boost.
You asked for this.
I did not ask for this! What?
Give Hades my regards.
Damn, Meg, why you gotta do me like that?
But before she just blindly jumps into her next run, she should look around for a bit and give us a chance to discuss the house.
Look, I came home with gems, though, for the house.
The thing about Hades is that it's a roguelike, but with a little asterisk at the end. Hades is actually a roguelite, which means it has some progression built in. The two main forms of progression are the Mirror of Night and the House Contractor. The first allows her to spend currency upgrading Zagreus and making him stronger, and the latter allows her to build upgrades in the underworld itself.
Oh. I can do scrying pool. I'm assuming everything is, like, good.
So with that being said, between failed attempts at Megaera, she's able to make incremental upgrades in the house before going back out on another escape attempt.
2,500 for Defiance. I'm gonna save up, though. I want greater reflex.
Couple that with the fact that she's only getting better with each attempt because she's learning more each time she decides to try again, and her first victory is only a matter of time.
What? Oh, I killed her! Yo! Let's go! Woo!
Achilles might know what to do with this.
After defeating the Furies, she can move on to Asphodel, which has its own set of challenges.
Spooky. Asphodel. Asphodel? Asphodel? How do I say this?
Most prominently is the lava surrounding the arena that acts as a new environmental hazard.
Oh no! No! Oh shit. Okay.
I like this level because instead of passing through gates to get to the next chamber, my girlfriend can take these little boats. Since the whole place is submerged in lava and Zag isn't exactly fireproof, we got a bit of a problem here.
No! There is no escape.
My girlfriend really struggled with all the traps dotted around Tartarus, and although Asphodel has its own share of ways one can hurt themselves, stepping off the platform seemed like the biggest risk for our lovely lava lady.
Where am I? What the I'm going for a walk.
She can stumble into some of the backstory of why Zagreus is trying to leave in the first place just by poking around the house in between runs. When prompted to lie down in bed, she can trigger a flashback that explains some things.
Lower your voice, old man. I'm trying to be sneaky here.
I'm trying to be sneaky here.
Zagreus sneaks into his father's office and goes poking around looking for info.
Lost
Damn.
Prince of the Underworld Zagreus, absorb the contents of this hidden letter, written in his mother's hand.
Ah, that's so fun. No wonder I get palm power-ups.
His mother's hand. My mother's hand? Wait, what?
I'm talking to the
Saying this
narrator.
specifically that she's my mother?
So as it turns out, Zagreus wants to make it to the surface to find his mother.
Lineage, entirely by chance.
She'll have to keep climbing to find out more.
Explain. Oh, you cannot leave me in. Oh my god.
The best way to get better is to practice, so hop to it. While she's sending more attempts, allow me to tell you, oh, wait a minute, what boon is that? Today's video is sponsored by boot.dev. I'm excited to share this one because we had a lot of fun with it. The folks over at boot.dev have taken up the noble goal of teaching you popular programming languages, but with a fun twist. They've gamified the experience and have turned their courses into an interactive journey. Yeah.
Oh my god, wait, there's confetti.
We got experience points, Taryn.
Wait.
On to the next lesson.
Oh, this is fun.
There are all sorts of lessons that will take you from 0 to 100 in back-end web development, languages like Python, SQL, and Go to name a few. Taryn and I sat down to try the Python course one evening and ended up learning way more than we expected. And then Boolean is a type that can only have one of two values, true or false,
Okay.
right? As you may have heard, computers really only use ones and zeros. These ones and zeros are just true and false, or Booleans.
That makes so much sense.
The lessons teach you practical skills that can be applied in real-world situations. Honestly, we kind of forgot we were in a course at all because it was just a ton of fun. And then no casing is everything's lowercase and no separations, and it's just don't do this. No one would recommend doing that. Each course comes with a free demo of the interactive experience. It's a great place to start if you're interested in the full program. What's really nice is that boot.dev has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so giving it a shot is totally risk-free. So if coding has ever piqued your interest, there's never been a better time to try boot.dev for yourself, because with our code BOYMEETSGIRL, you can get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan. Links and info will be down in the description so that you can start learning today. While we're back at the house, the Mirror of Night goes a long way to making her feel like she's improving even when failing run after run. She can unlock things like an extra dash, more health healed per room, and probably most importantly of all, Death Defied.
Oh my god, I hate everything! I hate everything!
Death Defied is basically an extra life, and when taking lethal damage, one gets consumed and she gets some health back.
Death
Defied! These are largely responsible for why she's able to tolerate the starting from scratch aspect of the game, because in a way, when she dies, she's not starting from scratch. She's able to start from where she left off at the cost of her Death Defied.
Ooh, I do not. Asphodel is not my favorite.
Getting back to Asphodel means doing Tartarus again, and much to her disappointment, that also means throwing down with Meg for a second time.
Oh.
Oh no.
That's how I'm feeling.
Death this time here, Zagreus.
No, thank you, ma'am. I want to go to lava. I mean, I don't, but I can't get to the next area without going through the lava.
The good news is that having conquered her once before, she's earned some confidence.
Ah!
And the Fury is not the threat she once posed.
Wait, what happened to me? Oh, I killed her! Nothing happened to me. She died.
Now that she's starting to consistently make it to Asphodel, she's starting to pick up the pace too. At the end of the lava scape is the Bone Hydra.
Hello?
Hi.
She made a point to give all the weapons a try, and although she started out really liking the shield, in the end it was the spear that won her over. What's nice is that its pierce damage was really good for hitting multiple of the Hydra heads at once, and although it took her a couple of tries, she mastered this fight a lot faster than Meg.
Come on, baby. This was the one, and I'm not in lava.
She's riding the victory high for now, but things are about to screech to a halt because she's entered Elysium.
Look at that, I'm going up. I'm going up. Is the ground gonna hurt in this one?
This is where the heroes go to rest, and the enemies reflect that. This place is a bit of a step up in difficulty compared to the last two levels, and her maiden voyage was proof that it was going to be an uphill battle.
Wait, they turn into eyeballs?
Aside from the enemies having thick health bars, their ability to regenerate after dying, if not taken out quick enough, was the real challenge in Paradise.
It's shooting butterflies. Oh! Why do I feel like the butterflies are not nice?
Fear not, though, as it's time for a little bit of girlfriend strategizing.
I did not have that.
So let's talk about gods for a bit. Of all the gods of Olympus she'd encountered, there were some clear standouts and favorites. Among the boons of Olympus, there was one that she was willing to die for. Ares, and more specifically his Doom boon, were the core of my girlfriend's plan of attack.
I can't see it. Palm! Oh, wait, but I don't have that much health. Oh. Palm.
Hitting an enemy with Doom puts a Damocles sword of sorts above their head, and it'll drop and damage them after some time passes.
These guys are annoying, but I much prefer them to the casters.
It became a crucial part of her strategy because rather than spending her time wailing on the enemies, she could just tag them once and then focus on staying alive. Perfect for learning.
It is cool to have Doom on both attack and regular special attack, but I'm not thinking to use X, and I'm already 2 areas deep.
Killing the enemies isn't enough in Elysium since they can regenerate, but that's where Doom came in handy because it would take out the enemies before they had time to regenerate. Hit the eye once. There you go. Doom. Easy. And only half your health bar is gone. You're fine. The real trick was getting Ares to show up in the first place and offer her Doom, though.
Doom!
So all through her adventure, she's been finding nectar that she can hand out as a gift to the different characters around the game.
I can gift. Let's do it for my dog.
When the gods of Olympus are gifted nectar, she gets a keepsake that guarantees they'll show up for her, and this is how she got her coveted Doom.
So basically, this is really cool. I need to give Hades honey. Not Hades. I need to give Ares honey.
The problem was she kept getting so excited when Ares would show up that she'd forget to give him a drink.
Wait, I forgot to give him a gift. Shit.
Oh, you're 1 gold, Taryn.
I have a couple of goals apparently.
With her Doom strategy, she started to actually make some headway into Elysium. The enemies would melt under the God of War's boon, and before she knew it, she'd actually made it to the imposing gates of what could only be the area's boss battle.
Oh, this is like the boss.
You're entering uncharted territory.
Is that Nectar?
She walked into the boss of Elysium oozing confidence. Not to mention, she had all 3 Death Defied in her back pocket, which gave her the most confidence of all.
Honey.
You got all 3 Death Defieds though.
I do. I'm trying to get, there we go. I was like, I want the lore.
Not only did she have all 3 for her battle, but it meant she'd made it here without losing a single one either.
I'm going in. Elysium boss, let's go!
She thought she was prepared for anything that could have been beyond that door.
So there's 2 guys, so probably a big guy. Is this like Greek Ornstein and Smo? Yo!
Even with all the things this run had going for it, getting these 2 on the first try was a tall order.
Damn it. I was doing so good. Man, I was pretty close to a first try.
Girlfriend's biggest hurdle at this point on her Hades journey was not using all the tools she was given. It's a bit of a joke that she only knows how to push 1 button at a time, but it's got a nugget of truth to it. Things boil down to either an X button run or a Y button run, depending on which one she chose to invest upgrades in.
Look, oh my god, I'm gonna do the Ares boons. So I need slicing shot, boons, Ares' aid. That's tough because I don't really use the aids. That'll have to be another goal of mine.
The gods also can offer her a call. This one works a little differently as it has to be charged up during a room and she can consume the bar to use it. The bar always empties between encounters, so it's use it or lose it type of situation. But unfortunately, too good to use syndrome comes for us all.
Call messes me up. I've tried using call.
I know, so that's what I'm saying. Don't even worry about it.
Because it's like impervious.
Like,
well,
the call is the play if you would actually use it, but since you don't, you can use the other one. If the bar were ever to fill all the way up, she could consume it all at once for a greater call. But the only time that's really feasible is in a boss fight.
Who dares threaten my little
She called. Holy shit, she called. With the bowl down, Theseus is all that's left. He's not nearly as big of a threat all on his own, and with patience and careful positioning, he was soon to come after. Her biggest takeaway from this fight was that the game still had plenty of ways to help her. She just needed to be willing to explore them.
guys, I called. I think Nick's jaw was on the floor when I called.
This isn't just growth for her in Hades, but growth for her as a player in general. As knowing how she operates, I was fully prepared to see her never press the call button for the entire game. So celebrate this victory now, but don't forget, we haven't made it out just yet.
The Temple of Styx. Oh.
She was cooking with her build this run and continued to the next area with her chest puffed out. The Temple of the Styx is the final stop on her way to the surface. And things work a little bit differently here than the previous levels. First and foremost, an old friend is waiting here to greet her.
Oh no, not this.
No!
The multi-headed Cerberus stands vigilant before they unlock
Wait,
its entryway.
do I have to fight him?
The tales are
So it's
He's
really come to this,
growling.
don't we? After everything we've been through. Well then, this is how
I
it has
have to
be.
fight
There's
my
nothing else to say,
dog!
except for on your guard.
No!
No, but seriously, boy. I know why you're here.
Was this a
To be
joke?
To make you look the other way.
Thankfully, she won't need to battle Cerberus. That would have been a tough fight to win without hitting him.
Aw.
After a moment's
I'm gonna take
hesitation
the
and
whimpering to be a good thing.
voracious hound of hell barks once affirmatively toward the
Yay!
Anyways, Zagreus can slip by Cerberus by giving him his favorite snack. The satyr chambers can be found off to the left, and the sack is hidden in one of them. To the right is also a Karen shop with some super good items stocked.
What?
Quite a stash there, Charon.
Oh my god. Okay, I can afford none of this, but this is how you get more diamonds. How do you get 1,000 coins? I guess go into the coin rooms a bunch. What in the world? And I could get 2 palms?
My girlfriend wasn't exactly rolling in coin this run, so her goal was to get in and get out with the sack as quickly as possible.
I have so many options! And I thought it was cool to at least... What the hell is this?
Inside of the tunnels, the enemies can inflict the poison status effect, which just chews through HP and is a pain to deal with.
What the hell just happened? Oh, I got poisoned. Am I okay? Cure?
Not poisoned at the moment, thanks.
Does that tree have boots?
There are these pools she can drink from to heal, but not getting hit with it in the first place is ideal.
Well, why is there poison? Who thought this would be a good idea?
She really liked the Satyr tunnels because the rooms are so tiny, and if she was aggressive, she could clear them out really fast.
What is this?
Disgusting. Cerberus will love it.
Oh, because I found that for him.
She got real lucky here and found the sack on only the second tunnel she searched, but clearing all the tunnels just for the fun of it isn't so bad once you get the hang of how they work.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Oh, that's juicy.
Regardless, with the snack in hand, she can give it to Serb and finally make it to the surface.
Oh, Cerberus.
All right, boy, I got your favorite treat. But you have to promise to let me pass if I can, okay? I owe you one, boy.
Cerberus vanquished? Not really.
Well, after 24 escape attempts and some change, Hades himself has finally come to put a stop to her antics.
It's my dad.
Of course.
Do I have
I
to?
never grew accustomed to the air up here. It gusts senselessly whichever way it pleases.
Oh, he's
I suppose you
mad.
must prefer it to the stillness of the air below.
Oh my god!
I suppose that you must hate the very sight of me.
This is the final boss of the Ascent, and he doesn't pull his punches. Lots of what she's learned on her way up here comes into play. Hades hits hard and uses attacks similar to hers. The irony being that Hades also fights using a spear, so in a way, he's testing how well my girlfriend knows her own moveset.
Oh, jeez.
Seeing how the fight works for only the first time, a lot can go wrong in quick succession, and mistakes in this fight are super punishing.
No!
Boy, that there is no escape.
So close. So close.
After making it to him the first time, Taryn was sure she could beat him the next time she saw him, but she still had some work to do. For starters, she wasn't even getting to him consistently yet, as she still needed practice with Theseus and Asterius.
What? He actually hit me? That's frustrating. I thought I was hiding behind the pillar.
When she would get to him, sometimes she would be so beaten up from the climb there that she couldn't put up much of a fight anyways. My girlfriend wanted a power boost to give herself an edge the next time she made it that far, and the solution she landed on was Titan's blood.
You think you can butter me up with such trifles?
Uh-oh, confiscated.
Get out of here.
Titan's blood is what she won for defeating Meg all the way back in Tartarus. She actually gets one each time she beats the Furies for the first time with a new weapon. She can spend this resource to upgrade her spear and unlock different movesets for it. But to max it out, she needed to use all the weapons on Meg. This was cool because we finally got her to set down the spear and try some other things out.
If I don't... if I don't have the gems on me, like the cast gems, then I take 10% less damage and I do 30% more damage. But I got that one on purpose because I knew it could be useless, but I got it on purpose to make me use the cast.
Earlier in this playthrough, I thought she needed a little nudge, so we tried to coax her into putting down the spear, which is just code for I switched her weapon while she stepped away to grab a glass of water, and the results were mixed.
Okay, let's do this. What? What the fuck?
Surprise! I guess this wasn't necessary though, as she did find her way there eventually. Meg wasn't particularly difficult at this point, and she managed to beat her with all of them. But a couple she even managed to snag an extra diamond from being the Hydra with. What surprised me the most was that she went the furthest with the gun of all things, and actually beat Elysium with it.
So basically, I would just throw down my gems. The boar would be charging me, just getting hit by 3 gems the whole time. And then as soon as they got tired, I would just lob my explosive, and it would just explode them and just do chunks out of their health bar over and over. And he can't, like, the spear guy can't block that.
I'll take her swapping back to the spear as an opportunity to remind you all that we stream over on Twitch, and Taryn's entire Hades playthrough was done live over there. If you're interested in seeing her playthroughs from start to finish, that's the place to be.
Yeah. This kind of stream is a little bit different than usual because it's gonna be very likely for like a video, so it's like important that I'm able to play it blind.
If you missed out on Hades, don't be distraught though. You can find all the VODs uploaded on Girl Meets Boy. I'm sure we'll tackle Hades 2 someday in the future, so make sure you're following so you won't miss the sequel. Nothing. With the spear upgraded and back in her hands, it was like the weighted vest came off, and she started making it to Hades every single run. That meant more practice and opportunities to learn his moveset. As she kept getting closer, it was seeming more and more like the old man's days were numbered.
I'll take care of this.
Why is he impervious? Why is he impervious?
To have been brought this low by my own ungrateful child. I would expect such treatment from my brothers, but from you... This.
No! There was a phase 2?
You're stubborn, boy. However, so am I.
Oh, fucking hell, Hades!
Oh, he's tough for an old man.
Truly a disheartening feeling to be so close to victory, only to learn she wasn't even halfway there. It's frustrating to say the least, especially when your boyfriend watches you practice all weekend and doesn't think to warn you that it's coming.
God, that's disappointing. I had that. Except I didn't, because there's a freaking phase 2! That was such a good run!
Since she was killed by the phase transition animation, she didn't actually see what the second phase of the fight entails. Fighting her way back came with the taxing knowledge of knowing that she was very likely going to die again. But that didn't stop her. At the end of the day, that's all a roguelike is. Getting hit in the face until you learn to step out of the way.
No!
Your flailing attempts against me are embarrassing.
After getting knocked back down to the house enough times, something changed. Picking boons wasn't about getting to Hades. It was about beating Hades. She wasn't picking things up that made the journey easier. She wanted things that would have an impact in the final battle. She took every trial room, entered every chaos gate, and saved all her money for the shop at the end.
Epic! Oh my god!
Whether she realized it or not, she was supplementing her aggressive upgrading with her own skills at the game. Gone was the player that would take the easier door or would buy health just to be safe. With that type of mindset, Hades didn't stand a chance in hell.
I guess there's only one thing left to do. Isn't that so, Father?
What shall it take for you to stop this
Okay.
foolishness? Yes, I'll strike them down right now. My foolish brother cannot help me now.
Okay, so he's not calling anything else. Nice.
Let's finish
Probably
this
could have
then.
saved it for the next level, but
For
whatevs.
your own father. But we are not finished here yet.
We are not finished here yet, Hades.
Blast you.
Okay, am I safe? I think I'm safe. Okay, it's the first one, we're good.
Blast.
You're going back. I see.
We're good here, we're good here. Yeah! 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 I did it! Oh, I took out Hades! Yes!
Get out of here! Get out!
Oh, damn, Dad's kicking me out.
Goodbye.
Goodbye!
Wait.
Oh!
If you somehow find her, tell her something for me. Tell her Cerberus is doing very well.
Oh! Hades still cares for her.
Persephone. My mother. Why did she leave?
That's a very good question. What?
Blood and darkness.
What?
There is.
Hades! Just no escaped! Oh my god, I killed Hades! So Hades is having a one-way trip back to his house.
With Hades finally defeated, Zagreus can finally gaze at the sun for the first time in his life.
That's the sun.
Whoa! That's amazing!
Although Zagreus is able to reunite with his mother, his story's far from done.
This is amazing!
Hello? Why did you leave me?
You died.
What?
You died.
Oh, God. You never even knew I existed either.
Oh my god, so neither of them knew that each other existed! So that's why she left? Why didn't Hades ever tell her?
Fates. My son.
Oh, Mom!
He said to tell you Cerberus is doing very well.
Is it that you found me? Zagreus?
Wait, what's going on?
Guess I'm just a little tired, that's all.
No, that isn't it. You cannot stay here.
I can come back.
Farewell, my son.
Bye, Persephone.
I shall be waiting here. However long it takes.
No! Taken by the Styx. However long it takes. I'll be back, Persephone.
Hold on.
The first escape is only one small step for Hades, but it's one giant leap for Girlfriend.
If there's one way to make Terran try and win a roguelike again, it's definitely being like, have a conversation with your mom. God, they know me well.
That's the beauty of a roguelike. The end is really only the beginning.
I feel so proud of myself.
Thank you to everyone who came with us on this journey and watched live over on Twitch. Our mods deserve an extra big salute because not a single thing got spoiled for Terran. As always, I have to give a tremendous shout out to all our channel members and patrons who help make videos like these possible. Extra special thanks goes out to our sixth wheelers, Daniel Rogers, Gizmo, Isaac Vogan, David Webb, Mace, Grey Sleepy, Taco Supreme, Parav Skittles, Envy, Cry, Regulus, Blondes, Shane Boy, and Cerberus. She's still got way more to do in Hades, but as far as my goal from the outset of this video, I think we have our answer.
Oh!
The prophecy has been fulfilled.
1,000 nights.
A Hades 2 video will come eventually, but she's got more than a few escapes left in her before we get there. Hopefully we see you then.
Here we go again.